Okay, I guess I'll get started then, just to not waste anybody's time. And if we can get this up, you can see a presentation. And if not, then you just have to take my word for it, which I try not to tell people to do, but that's all I have for you today.
Do you want me to see if we can get a tech person to come in?
He's coming back and forth best he can. So my name is Patrick Fitzgibbon. I'm with the Utah I'm with the Utah Department of Commerce. Presently today, I'm actually with the Utah Division of Professional Licensing. But before, I was with Consumer Protection, and as we speak, I'm handling a little bit of a transition with Consumer Protection, so that's why I'm here. I'm speaking on behalf of Consumer Protection. So who all's heard of the Utah Division of Consumer Protection before? Do you guys know what we do? We have a mission statement. We want to strengthen trust in Utah's commercial activities by protecting consumers through education and impartial enforcement. Educational opportunities like this, as well as other community outreach, as well as through our website, and through enforcement. We like to enforce. We have 27 or 28 statutes. Sorry, we just had a legislative session. I can't remember how many we ended up with as of now. It's either 27 or 28 individual statutes that we're here to enforce. Okay, pop quiz. Younger people and older people, who do you think gets affected by scams and fraud more often?
Older people. College age depends on the scam, but oldest people probably.
Yes and no. It does depend on the scam. According to the Federal Trade Commission's 2022 Consumer Data Spotlight, younger people fall for scams more often than older people. However, the scams that older people fall for and the nature of the harm is a lot greater. So that's kind of the difference there. Any one older person, if they're falling for a scam, it's just as likely as not that they're falling for one that they could lose a lot more money, because they're usually ones of trust, ones over the phone, typically those imposter scams that we've all heard of. But older people, or excuse me, younger folks typically fall for scams on social media, online. Click on an advertisement. I'll go ahead and buy these, let's say, shoes. Oh, they never came. Shoot, out $300. I guess I'll report it because I'm savvy enough to know I should report these things. Age 18 to 59, the median loss for a younger person in a scam is $500. From ages 70 to 79, the median loss is $800. 80 and up, that number goes up quite a bit to $1,500. So, like I said before, older people typically fall for scams of trust more. And why I'm sure you guys are here is because you're trying to get your juniors and seniors to be a little more aware of what's in the marketplace and what's out there to help them. 34, let me tell you some stats on younger people, which you would have seen on this beautiful slideshow that it has. It's not beautiful, it's good enough. 34% are more likely to report losing money to fraud, that's younger people. 86% are more likely to report online shopping fraud. Younger people, ages 18 to 50, I'm calling them younger people, but this goes all the way to age 59 because it's pretty much the same through that age group. Age 18 through 59 are 4 times more likely to lose money to investment scams. And 31% of those younger people reported contact with fraud over social media. Social media is, of course, the big area where people are seeing it. Sometimes it's through those imposter scams like, hey, it's me, Warren Buffett, and I need your help with some, like those kinds of things. But younger people typically don't fall for that kind of stuff. It's older people that fall for the imposter scams. Younger people, like I said, are falling for, hey, there's this new cryptocurrency out there you can invest in, and if you get started now, you can be able to retire by your 30. You don't even have to have a career in college. That's probably not true. It's usually a scam. It's basically always a scam.
I do have a question.
Sure, yes.
Maybe about 10 years ago, I heard just some stats about crime.
Mm-hmm.
Since you work with Utah's consumerism, that the greatest crime in Utah is identity theft. It was about 10%, but that's the case anywhere. It's about 10% at the time.
Greatest crime, you mean most prevalent crime?
Compared to other crimes. And I was just thinking how, like back then, if you really did the math, you realize that like the other kind of crimes, it's not that it's worse in Utah, it's just that it's the same everywhere.
We just don't have other crimes.
Right.
Larger percentage.
Right, it looks worse because of that. I'm just curious if the stats are still, the identity theft is still around 10%. Is that where we're at? Do we know?
That I don't know. But if you stand by, I apologize for being distracted. So sorry about that. Scams, fraud, don't let it happen to you. That's the name of the presentation. That's my mission statement right there. That was going to be a whole reveal that I just said right there. So forgive me for that. So you're asking if identity theft is still the biggest.
Yes, and like you said, Utah just happened to be. It's not that
Yeah.
it's bigger than the other crime.
Yeah.
It's not that it's more prevalent in
Yeah.
Utah. It just happens to be a crime across the board. Saying no matter what state you live in.
So I haven't
Down 10%.
read that. I actually don't know where that comes from.
Like 10 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm just curious if you knew that.
I don't. I'm sorry. I wish I did. I can tell you something that does get repeated as I'm going to call it a truism because I can't find data to say for sure, but they call Utah the scam capital of the country, maybe of the world. You guys have probably seen that or felt that before. I can't find numbers to say whether or not that's true. I just find it repeated a bunch of times. So I don't know.
I think it's because of that stat that I was telling you.
Possibly it's that.
People are like, oh, identity theft is worse than all the other crimes in Utah. It's like high, but realistically.
I also think that truism comes from Utah's strong door-to-door sales culture, be it in our churches or otherwise. We have strong affinities here. Anybody know what affinity is? Just for anybody, for the recorded session, I'll just go ahead and say it out loud. Affinity is a community group, essentially. Be it a church is a common one. Maybe you're part of the same club. Maybe you are in an award, something like that. Because we've got such strong affinity, I think that is another reason why we believe in that truism as well. So we just want people to know that the word con is short for confidence, and people try to use their connections to you to get into that kind of thing. We tell all people in outreach that kind of a thing. So just because you know the person is no guarantee that what they're saying is correct. Maybe they mean it. Maybe they're not scammers themselves, but it doesn't mean it's a good, clean bill of goods necessarily. So and for any of you that caretake for elderly people as well, elderly people are 5 times more likely to report losing money on tech support scams. You guys are familiar with that. A pop-up comes up or whatever. 24% reported contact with fraud through the phone. I make the connection as I read these facts that it's because of those types of scams. That's why those kind of losses are prevalent in those age groups. Social media scams are on the rise. This number comes from the Federal Trade Commission. In reports of money lost to fraud by people aged 20 through 29, social media was the contact method more than 38% of the time. For people age 18 to 19, that figure was 47%. So the younger they are, the more likely they are showing to lose money in those kinds of scams. The top social media scams: online shopping, investment-related, romance scams, and other. Of the money lost in scams on social media, more than half of it was lost to social media scams that went to investment scammers. When it comes to consumer protection, the Utah Division of Consumer Protection doesn't necessarily have anything to do with cryptocurrency. We do have, hey Mariah, hey Chandler, I work with those guys. The Utah Division of Consumer Protection does not regulate or have anything to do about crypto. It's an area that people report when they're having problems in the marketplace. If you have questions about crypto, I'm not your guy. Just want to be clear on that. So avoid scams on social media. Limit who can see posts and information, because people can often duplicate accounts or pretend they're somebody else just by being able to borrow pictures and certain information. If you get a message from a friend about an opportunity or an urgent need for money, call them, as their account may have been hacked. Sometimes use the word hack a little loosely. It's not necessarily that their account was hacked. Sometimes they just duplicate the account or just make it look like it's them through a whole different account. If someone appears on your social media and rushes you to start a friendship or a romance, slow down and never send money to someone you haven't met in person. That one typically falls for older people more often than younger people, but younger people have fallen for it as well. It's not like it's never happened. And check out a company before you buy. We have a little acronym in consumer protection, WISE. W-I-S-E. W is watch for red flags. I is investigate and research. S is set boundaries. E is examine the fine print. Because I'm a little naive, I actually think people are smart and wise themselves. What I just want to arm them with is a check down and a list of things to do before you jump into anything. Investigate and research companies that you find. Set boundaries as far as budgets and where you're comfortable buying. This is just my personal anecdote, but I don't like to buy from door-to-door sales. I mean, if you have something to sell door-to-door sales, I'm just not interested. Leave me your brochure. I'll think about it. but not that interested in doing that.
And I love them.
Love door-to-door sales?
Fall for 'em all the time.
Do really? We tell people to examine the fine print also in those contracts, because a lot of the complaints or questions we get into the Division of Consumer Protection are oftentimes people unsatisfied with contracts they've signed. And very, very rarely, almost never, is there something enforceable it's often just a one-side contract that they don't like. Very rarely can they be gotten out of it. Sometimes there are unenforceable things in those contracts, but it's just you can't count on that being a thing. So think before you sign. Think about it very clearly. Have you heard of the Knights of Scamalot campaign? You might have seen those commercials before movies or on TV or before YouTube ads. Scams.utah.gov. We educate people on different types of scams we see, how to avoid them, where to go to get help, and what to look for. That deals with all of the divisions within the Department of Commerce and the different kinds of scams. Real estate scams, cryptocurrency scams, investment scams, Ponzi schemes, let's see what else, romance scams, et cetera, et cetera. So here are the 20, I don't want to count them again. It's either 27 or 28 statutes that there's 28? There's 28 statutes that the Utah Division of Consumer Protection enforces. You can see already right there, Business Opportunity Disclosure Act, all the way to regulating pawn shops, secondhand merchandise, catalytic converters. But of all the complaints that we end up going, and I'm gonna let this woman take a picture real quick, 90% of them deal with this act right here, the Consumer Sales Practices Act. Our investigator in the back is excited about the Consumer Sales Practices Act. Basically, this is I'm going to call it the cornerstone act that lets us enforce business misrepresentations. Now, the Consumer Sales Practices Act, among other things, identifies what can be deceptive advertising, defines and prohibits deceptive acts, e.g., misrepresenting quality or standards, misrepresenting uses and benefits, failure to ship goods to or furnish services after payment, just buying it, didn't receive it, things like that. Contracts that attempt to waive rights entitled to consumers. I said that basically never happens, but it does happen sometimes. Some time ago, there were some companies that were trying to enforce, what are we calling it, Chandler? It was Consumer Review Fairness. The Consumer Review Fairness Act, basically there was a clause in some contracts that said, you can't give us a negative review online or else we can take you to court or whatever. Well, that is officially illegal now. There's actually a law that says you can't do that. At the time, after a lot of fighting, they said, well, that's unenforceable. Now it's actually illegal. If you ever see that in a contract, big red flag, probably don't sign that contract, but you should definitely tell somebody that's happening because it's illegal. Protect consumers from deceptive acts or practices by a supplier before, during, or after the transaction. So if a claim does not hold water, if you're not getting what you're paying for, that's against the law.
Is there an end date to that, like after 6 months, after 1 year? Is this before, during, or after?
I don't think there's any end date to it. Chandler, do you know the answer to that question?
I believe it's 10 years is the statute of limitations on that, I believe. I'm not 100% certain at this time, but just don't quite quote me.
You're always welcome to call and ask, though. So, because if you catch us in the office, we'll have the right material to research right then and there. But that's quite a long time, generally speaking. Examples of deceptive advertising: passing off goods, services as those of another, saying, I made these, but you didn't. You bought them secondhand from Walmart and said you made them. Advertising goods, services with intent not to sell as advertised, meaning here's the picture I'm using to sell, but I'm not actually selling that. Making false or misleading statements of fact concerning reasons for price reductions, going out of business sale, liquidation sale. If you say that, that's the reason it's for sale, well, by golly, it better be legitimate. That better be the reason for it. Using deceptive representations or designations of geographic origin in connection with goods and services. Does anybody know what I mean when I'm talking about that? Made in the USA comes to mind. There are some articles of clothing. There was a company, I believe this was adjudicated, but but I won't say the name of the company anyways. The Federal Trade Commission took action against this company. They were a super patriotic company that wanted to sell pro-America stuff. They were made in the USA, very proud of it. And consumers would buy that stuff because they're very proud of buying made in the USA products. Problem is, it's a lie. Wasn't made in the USA. could actually find out it was made in China. It's not illegal to buy something made in China or make something in China and sell it, but it is illegal to sell it saying it's made in the USA and using that exact thing to sell it to people. Also, representing that goods are original or new if they are deteriorated or secondhand. That's obvious. Disparaging the goods, services, or business of another by false representations or misleading fact, and plenty more. Those are just the ones that come up pretty frequently. The Federal Trade Commission is the national organization that's kind of synonymous with the Division of Consumer Protection. They're not the exact same thing, but we do work in tandem and deal with a lot of the same kinds of things. They actually deal with false or misleading advertising. That falls under the umbrella of the deceptive acts the FTC can't prohibit, and that's according to the Section 15 of the U.S. Code, Section 45 of Chapter 15 of the U.S. Code. So the FTC efforts to ensure truth in advertising. There must be a representation, omission, or practice that is likely to mislead consumers. The representation, omission, or practice must be material. The representation, omission, or practice is likely to mislead consumers acting reasonably under the circumstances. The act or practice is examined from the perspective of a reasonable consumer. The FTC must simply show that the conduct in question has a tendency or capacity to deceive consumers acting reasonably. Taken in totality is kind of what that means. And I can show some more examples. Recently, there was we've taken action against the company Nudge. Is anybody familiar with business opportunities situations? This was a real estate they sold, Chandler, how do I describe this? They sold real estate, they sold education is what they sold, allegedly, to teach you how to buy and flip houses. Only the problem is that none of this information was actually panning out to equate to information that was letting consumers make any money, and they made all the claims that they could be a millionaire doing it. Never panned out. Sellers promised to teach techniques at a free event. You can see this is an actual example of the flyer that they used. The seminars were designed to sell more training and not help consumers make more money. Every time you'd go, the upsell was $10,000 to our special exclusive event, another $30,000 to get leads. Furthermore, they would try to get people to open up new lines of credit and open up credit cards in their names. There's even more to it, but that's the 30,000-foot view of what they were doing. They violated the FTC Act, FTC's Telemarketing Sales Rule, our own Consumer Sales Practices Act, that's our favorite, the Business Opportunity Disclosure Act, and the Telephone Fraud Prevention Act. The claims to buy property for as low as pennies on the dollar is illusory to what they were actually doing. They didn't actually teach you how to do that. Nudge would buy dilapidated properties and sell them to people as turnkey investments using a financing company that Nudge already owned. So they were selling their own properties already, saying that you're flipping houses. Nudge would then sell the loans taken out by consumers to buy the properties to others as trust deeds. A lot of shady stuff going on. So the FTC took a lot of action on them. And the good news is that as of this year, the FTC is sending more than $10 million in refunds to the nearly 4,700 consumers who paid for that real estate investment training program. The reason I bring this story up is because clearly you have misrepresentations made all over the place here. And sometimes people feel very hopeless if they're stuck in these situations. And it does take a while to get them because you have to build a case against big companies with a lot of lawyers. It's hard to do, but every complaint helps, every situation helps. And it starts by coming to the Division of Consumer Protection. What about, yeah?
Sorry, I just had a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
For the Division of Consumer Protection, are you guys involved at all with like a contractor that sends out a video of something like that they're going to build for you, and then they represent they're going to build this thing for you, and then when they come back to do the actual work, they're not licensed to do any of that work?
So
you guys?
the division, okay, that can be the Division of Consumer Protection. It could also be the Division of Professional Licensing that would take care of that. We're in the same building on different floors, actually. We do talk to each other about that stuff. So you brought up two different issues that agencies would look at. You're looking at a misrepresentation potentially if you're not getting the product that you're paying for. And as far as DOPL would be concerned, they do need to be licensed for certain work that they're doing. Now, I don't know exactly what you're referencing, but when it comes to contract work, for example, yes, you do need to be licensed, and you cannot be offering your services as a contractor without proper licensure. That would be a consumer protection issue if you're advertising yourself as a professional, as a licensed professional in that field. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
They were general contractor,
Mhm.
but listed subcontractors under their general
Mhm.
that they've used in the past, but we're currently working with, saying that these are the people that will work on our
Mhm.
project,
Mhm.
and then they did the work themselves. They weren't the licensed plumber or the licensed electrician. They
Hmm.
were using somebody else's license.
Oh, okay. So that you can't do that. You can't do that. You should call Consumer Protection, I think, with that question because you might have something that that you'd want looked at. So we have an investigator here that could actually visit with you about that if you'd like.
And we also do with Nudge,
Mhm.
that generally when the market was going up,
Mhm.
people were generally making money, so the complaints weren't probably coming in. When the market kind of stagnated and interest rates went way up, now people are for sure not making money on this model. And so the complaints, of course, came up quickly to see what the practices really were. But anybody that knew Nudge knew that they were both providing the education and also doing the loans, but it was all okay because people were making money. People stopped making money, it started to become a real big issue. And I'm just saying that seems like some of the driving factors is sometimes things can go along because no complaints if things are working, what seem to be working for everybody. As soon as they stop working for everybody, then that edgy thing is now looked at more scrutinized more so. Even though it might have been before,
Yeah.
I might guess.
Sure.
It was around for a while doing
Yeah.
these practices.
Yeah.
And I knew that was going on. Everybody knew that was going on. It took so long because those two things. One, it takes time. But two, people just mostly lost money at that point.
We also just sometimes don't know what you don't tell us, and that could play into it. Yeah.
No, I understand.
You know, so yeah.
Just saying
Yeah.
that it's just an interesting one you brought up because
Yeah.
no,
That was a big action that we took lately. And that's for business opportunities like that. A lot of them do exist. If they exist, they need to be registered with the Utah Division of Consumer Protection. We actually have a registration function as well. So one thing I like to remind people in these kinds of outreach is that if you get pitched on something like that, ask if they're registered with the Utah Division of Consumer Protection. And if they say yes, you can verify that on our website, dcp.utah.gov. We have a verify a registration tool. And on the drop down on there, you can see all the different kinds of businesses that we register. We don't register every single business in the state of Utah, but there are a few that have a statute that we do have to register. Business Opportunities is one of them. Nudge was not registered as a business opportunity, which is why they found themselves. Actually, so sorry, that could be mistaken. They were violating the BOTA Act, but I don't know if it's because they weren't registering or not. I apologize, I misspoke. So,
sometimes that's why it takes time, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
Especially because people are making money, they're not
Yeah.
saying anything.
well, right. I mean, you
Because you might be able to continue to make money.
Sure.
So they're less likely.
if you're not feeling consumer harm, why are you complaining? Yeah.
Like I said, once the market turned in a way where it was hard under that model to
Right.
make money,
Yep.
and maybe only lose money.
Right.
Then it became, it's not like the company changed much.
Right.
It's just that all of a sudden reports started coming in.
If I were betting on it, I would also bet that the proprietors of Nudge probably weren't telling people about that potential risk in it. They were probably just selling it as, oh no, it's fine. You make money hand over fist. That's what we do. And that's another problem is they're not representing that.
So a track.
Because part of the things that a business opportunity does have to disclose to Consumer Protection is how many people or what percentage of people have made profit on this program. And a lot of them don't want to share that because it's not usually as enticing as what they're trying to pitch actually. But for your students that are getting out and about in college next year or in the next couple of years, here's what some complaints have said. Not some complaints. Here's what some case law has said about false advertising in general. So take a look at all these cooking chips right here. This one right here, white baking chips. It's great value. It doesn't say chocolate or cocoa anywhere on the front. The ingredients doesn't say it on the back, but somebody had a problem with this. They said, well, I thought I was buying white chocolate chips. Which Great Value says, no. We didn't say anywhere on there that it's chocolate. Nowhere did we say that. So the trial court, the original trial court says, no reasonable consumer is likely to be misled by the packaging. But do you remember earlier when I said it's about the totality of things? That's where you're going to find this product. In the same aisle as the other chocolate chips, packaged in similar packaging to the other chocolate chips. Great Value designed and displayed the product knowing consumers likely won't check the ingredients, knowing a reasonable consumer won't, because they do market research. They know who's buying their stuff, and they know you're not looking at it. They can be found in this manner amongst similar products with similar packaging. And as a reasonable consumer, you're not going there with your head on a swivel, really thinking through. You're usually going there with a screaming child just like this, or very stressed, not thinking anything of it. A reasonable consumer might believe the product contains cocoa butter based on the totality of the presentation. The appellate court cited a different case. Many grocers make quick decisions that do not carefully consider all info. I can't read my whole slide, I'm so sorry. But it's all on there though. Similarly, there's an exception made for fanciful interpretation. If you're buying Crunch Berries or Fruit Loops, you know you're not buying berries, and you know you're not buying fruit. I mean, because look, they have a picture on the cover that's clearly not those things. You're buying it in the cereal aisle with other cereals. You're not in the fruit section. So a case was properly dismissed where the plaintiff alleges unreasonable or fanciful interpretation because this was in the Bell versus Public Supermarkets. These cereal balls do not remotely resemble any naturally occurring fruit of any kind. Anybody know what dark patterns are? Anybody ever heard of that? The Federal Trade Commission is trying to limit or get rid of these dark patterns. Essentially, it is when a company makes it willfully difficult to cancel a subscription or a contract, like you have to click through several pages, you can't find the button, it's this big on the page, it's hard to do. Companies have tried to get away with that for a long time, and it's finally starting to come to a head. The Federal Trade Commission is trying to get it out. So design practices that trick or manipulate users into making choices they would not otherwise have made, and that may cause harm. You guys are teachers. Do kids still play Fortnite? Is that a thing? Okay. So have you heard about the case of Epic Games against the FTC? FTC alleged that the creators of Fortnite deployed design tricks to get consumers of all ages to make unintended in-game purchases. You can see right here, Epic Games had clear instruction on how to back out of transactions on Fortnite. I want to buy this V-Bucks or I want to undo right here. It's very clearly stated. However, they ultimately ended up changing it to where it's this big on the screen now. I talked to other high school kids about it in other presentations. They say, yeah, they would even change the buttons like at random as to what would actually cancel it. They were willfully being hard to back out of transactions for. So Epic Games later deliberately made instructions more difficult to find on the screen. So the company made it easy for kids to rack up charges without parental consent, and they locked accounts that disputed those charges with credit card companies. So they were retaliatory in nature as well. So there was naturally a settlement. So $245 million settlement with Epic Games, and they will provide consumers with refunds. Mariah, have you read up on this case lately? I think they had closed the ability to get refunds back by now.
I don't think you can still apply, but
It's okay. I mean, you can always look it up. I mean, it's still out there in the news. You can check. I think it was until like January of this year you could. Maybe later, but I'm not sure on that. Junk fees. Well, did you have your head raised?
Just kind of along those lines, where does the Apple case go right now? Or they're monopolizing?
Refresh my memory on what exactly is it an antitrust case or what's going on with that?
Apple Market, you have to put their stuff in order to sell your product to there. You have to sell it to their marketplace.
Gotcha.
Well, yeah.
Gotcha.
That one, and then the other one was, I think they're kind of monopolizing because they're like, you can't send pictures of full quality to Android users and things like that.
Oh.
So it's exclusionary.
I see.
So that it kind of forced people to stay in the Apple ecosystem.
Gotcha.
Things like that. So that
I don't know. I have heard generally what this was, but I don't know of any updates in that space.
does that fall under kind of this area or not junk fees?
So because that was between Apple and Epic Games directly, we wouldn't have been involved
Mhm.
in that because there wasn't any.
Right. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
it's not you guys.
Yeah.
Specifically. This is like a big.
Right. When it comes to questions like that, sometimes we only know as much as you know because we read the news the same as you. Just to clarify for everybody, if it's a problem with business to consumer, we might have some sort of insight into that. But no, I don't know where they've landed on that. Well, clearly they haven't landed on anything yet, but I don't know where they're thinking on that right now. Interesting. We all hate junk fees, correct? Well, there's a big push to get rid of those as well. In practice, here's kind of what they look like. You're on DoorDash or whatever this app is, and you're hungry for a cheeseburger. So you go to Jim's Burgers. It's half a mile away, $0 delivery fee on your first order. Well, that's a great deal. think I'll go ahead and get that. And on the next screen, the restaurant makes several indications that there will be no delivery fee. 2 different spots, $0 up in the top right, $0 on the final button. Until you get to the last screen, in checkout, all of a sudden, now it's $18.03 because of your fees and estimated tax. Where did that come from? What do? They just calculate at the very last second. The previously undisclosed service fee appears at checkout. Currently, the FTC has a rule that's proposed right now. Used to be you could comment on that rule. I don't know if comment section is still open, but if you follow that QR code, you could probably at least read the rule in its entirety. FTC estimates that these fees cost consumers tens of billions of dollars a year in unexpected costs. That's kind of an upcoming thing to look for. As you tell your students to watch out for those late night munchies in their dorms, be sure to keep them mindful of junk fees and how they can rack up quickly.
Convenience fees fall under that.
Yes, they do. They can. I mean, presently, I'm not familiar with any fee stopping any rule stopping a convenience fee. I think right now the word of the day is disclosure. Just be clear, you know. No, they don't. Exactly. That's the problem. Is because, well, I was going to buy this until the end. Chandler.
Yeah, so I can comment on that a lot. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of cases dealing with that.
Yeah.
Typically, if it's an online website or an order type of situation, the entity would need to disclose on their homepage or make it very clear and conspicuous that from the get-go that there will be associated fees, or that it's like tickets, these are resale, so they may not be actual MSRP. So they would need to disclose right off the bat that there would be additional fees.
Same with international fees, huh?
Yeah.
You know, you make an online purchase and all of a sudden there's an additional amount, even though it's in US dollars supposedly. All of a sudden it's $10 more or whatever. It's interesting how.
But they sprung it on you in the last
Or,
second.
you know, like even the total says the right amount, and then all of a sudden the actual charge.
These kind of rules do move slowly, I should warn, but right now it does feel like the tide in the water. It feels like it's going against junk fees. I think that's kind of the fight. Where it ends up, I don't know. Maybe it's dead in the water. Maybe it never comes to fruition. But regardless, we can arm ourselves with knowledge to watch out for them.
Where does the tipping thing come in?
I don't know.
That's a new.
You talking like recent tipflation questions,
Well,
or
just like, before you even like get your food and order, like, it's
Yeah.
like how much you want your tip. Like, I haven't even got any service yet. Like, you can't pay until you go past the tip screen.
that's a hard one to comment on, because in the marketplace, typically the thinking is things cost what you're willing to pay for them, as long as they are transparent about how much it costs and what you're paying for. So it's a question of personal comfort and preference at that point. Sorry, did I have another hand raised? No? Okay. So on top of that, there's also the standard imposter scams to look out for. I saved that for the other presentation because it's usually reserved for elderly folks. I'm talking about the phishing scams. You've left a package on your doorstep, clicking bad links. Don't follow those. The other one is the bounce check scam. Has anybody heard of the bounce check scam? So in the gig economy, if you're freelance working online, say you edit videos, somebody says, hey, I want you to edit this music video for me. You charge $300 for it. You do the job for them, they send you a check for $3,000. Oh no, that was a mistake on my part. Just go ahead and send me the $2,700 back, keep the $300, it's fine. Except then the check bounces, and now you're out $2,700 and the $300 you didn't get paid. That happens sometimes, and people are susceptible to it because banks have to make funds available that day. These are just some common scams that we see. And with that, that's the end of the presentation. Anybody have any questions, comments, stories to share? Anything like that? Yes, sir.
Well, I guess just for anybody, because I've got like some personal examples I bring up in class. Like my mother-in-law got the gift card scam, $2,000 she's gone because she gave somebody gift cards, right? I got the pig butchering text to me earlier this year. So I have these examples where I can show screenshots from my phone of like these are these, and my kids and all of our kids. Well, all these people who, like gonna have to go into a little side lesson of let's not victim shame people. Let's be kind.
Yes.
Let's not. People are brave to come out forth with being scammed.
Yep.
But the idea is they're too smart with that, they're not gonna fall for that. So what are examples of, what are these kids that we're teaching?
Mhm.
Like, I understand the social media stuff, but do you have like specific things that they're gonna encounter
Mhm.
they're not too smart for?
So, specific things they're going to encounter. My one ace in the whole story was the bounce check scam in that specific answer to that specific question. However, one thing I like to tell people in outreach is, I just told you I'm naive and I think people are smart. That's true. But we're not smart because we just are. We're smart because we're guarded, because we think through our decisions first. That's A. B, we shouldn't shame people who have been taken by a scam because we need to talk about them so we know what's out there and what other people are experiencing. And C, you guys know about cognitive dissonance theory? You ever heard of cognitive dissonance theory? The idea is that we make leaps in our heads to be okay with the decisions that we make. Salespeople, be they good or bad or scammers, use cognitive dissonance theory to get you to make a decision. What they do is they create an uncomfortable situation. Like a door-to-door salesman's like, well, you certainly want your laundry to be whiter than it's ever been before, and you don't want to spend a lot of money, and you need this product, and the easiest way to get me off your doorstep is to buy what I'm selling. Or you need to get from place A to place B. The easiest solution is to buy this car. It's called cognitive dissonance theory, and it uses emotion against you. Scammers use emotion against you. You don't make bad decisions because you're not smart. You make bad decisions because somebody has framed it as an emotional decision. In an imposter scheme, you didn't give money to an imposter because you were thinking straight. You gave money to an imposter because the imposter got you terrified of something. They got you terrified that a loved one was in jail or hurt, or they got you to fall in love with them. So now you're emotional in that sense. Or they just got you trusting in what or they got you scared that your computer has been hacked by somebody and that you have no idea what to do. So it's your emotions that can be used against you. It's not that you're not smart. That's what I try to tell people. So if somebody gets you just really excited about something, that's when you need to check yourself and slow down and not be so excited. So that's what I would teach people, and like just the borderline, or excuse me, the baseline thing to teach there. What grades do you teach?
10 through 12.
10 through 12? All financial literacy, or do you teach other things too?
Financial literacy, actually. The
No?
biggest class I teach investment and wealth management.
Okay.
It's a newer course of the state. So that's where I teach a lot of this stuff.
Cool.
But I teach that for all my classes.
Mhm.
You're going to get scammed. Someone's going to try to scam you at some point.
Yes.
No matter what. So it's good to just.
Whether someone's going to try to scam you or not, because I sure wouldn't want to tell people to be scared of everything they see. I just want them to be very guarded about all the information that they take in. Like really look over it with a fine-tooth comb. If somebody offers you a good pitch or a good sales technique, ask for the contract right then and there. Ask for the material to sleep on and not to sign. Just really, just slow down and don't, like, when people buy solar panels that they were really excited to get, a lot of times what they find is they are in a lot of trouble because they just jumped into bed too fast with a salesman who wasn't really interested in giving you a good product. They just wanted to hit a sales quota. And that could be bad for the consumer, but they didn't intend to rip you off necessarily. So, yeah, that's a good one. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Just the one scam that I was really surprised at was I drive Uber, my wife drives Uber, and she got a call from Uber support, and it said there's been a report that you are drunk driving tonight at 2:30 in the morning.
Jeez.
When she was driving.
Uh-huh.
And they had all that information, verified everything, got into her account, and they took like $2,500 out of her account because they had her reset a password. Wow. And it all seemed legitimate, and it was a play on emotions. And she's like, this is crazy. And I had never heard of anything like that before.
This is the first time hearing it.
And so it's interesting when these things happen.
Yeah.
Like that they kind of need to be out there so that people know, because there are going to be people who turn 18 or 21 whenever you can. Like, I have a car, I want extra money, I will just go do it.
Right.
Or do whatever. And so there are things out there that are like just crazy.
And it seems like, and that's where that's another place they jam you up too, is like, part of this feels true-ish, like maybe it's partly true. It's not at all, but like part of this feels like, well, gosh, I do drive Uber, and maybe somebody reported me because they thought I was driving drunk and I wasn't, or whatever, and your livelihood is on Uber, and so you don't want that to be, you don't want to get in trouble with them. So they get you scared and to give them more information, let you into their account or whatever. One thing to remember on top of everything else I just said was that under no circumstances should you feel obligated to pay anybody over the phone who calls you, ever. You can call them to buy something if you want, but anybody that says, hey, it's the sheriff and you have a bench warrant out for your arrest because you missed jury duty or something, that's not how they handle that. Police are just going to come get you if they're going to come get you. They're not going to just shake you down for money over the phone, neither with the IRS, neither with the Division of Consumer Protection or the FTC. If you teach securities training, our colleagues at the Division of Securities have a class at 2:30 as well you might be interested in. They deal with a lot of good, well-to-do things with investments. They are on the same floor as us, so actually we work very close with them. Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. I'm Patrick Fitzgibbon, Division of Consumer Protection. We're going to be hanging out. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. So,